tell you how much I appreciate you all in Montgomery County. Many of you have been there since I was first elected to the House of Delegates back in 1993. Thank you, Beamer family. Thank you very much. But Montgomery County, Montgomery County was instrumental in my first election back in 1993 when we needed to have some new blood down in Richmond. I stepped into the seat that Steve Agee used to have, and that was the year that there was winds of change blowing across Virginia, and we also elected George Allen. But without Montgomery County's help, who knows what would have happened in that election. We did end up winning with a fairly sizable margin, but the largest margin came out of Montgomery County, and I appreciate it greatly. And I will always remember, and some of you here, I'm a Mary, and folks might remember that was the year that when the polls opened, it was -3 degrees. And I worked D1 until about lunchtime, and then I left D1. I thought, well, maybe I ought to go somewhere else, and I went over to D2 for a while. And then I decided that there were more folks coming in at D1, so I went back to D1, and I stayed at D1 until it closed. I was driving down the mountain, and it was just like a switch was turned on. I started getting sick on the way down the mountain. By the time I got down to the bottom of the mountain, I had engaged myself in a full-fledged cold. Bottom line was we ended up winning that race with 66.4% of the vote. And the reason I tell you that tonight is that my opponent was not a slouch, he was a good man. But it's hard to outwork me, because when you all gave me the nomination, I took on the responsibility to make a change. Because in order to have change in Washington, we have to change Congress. And you gave me that responsibility, and I will give you everything that I have. And I fully anticipate that on November 3rd, I'm going to have a cold. Because that adrenaline will keep pumping, and I will keep working for you, the folks of Montgomery County and the entire 9th District, so we can bring about change until the last minute of the last hour of this election cycle. And I think that when the votes are counted, we will have change in Washington, because we will have changed Congress. Now, folks, let's talk about Washington for a minute. You all know the top issues. They're nothing new. One, cap and trade. How can anyone representing Southwest Virginia, whether it be the coal fields or Montgomery County, whether it be Covington or Coburn, and not understand that a big part of our economy is based on mining and energy? And cap and trade, unlike my opponent who said, well, it's just a matter of, it's not that big a deal, you just have to plant a few trees. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's not the way it is. According to his good buddy, Barack Obama, who, he came out and campaigned for early in this campaign, in his campaign for presidency, Barack Obama says that, you pass cap and trade, the electric rates are going to skyrocket. Well, one of them's right, one of them's wrong. I tend to believe that Barack Obama is a true believer, and that he says we've got to pay for this, it's going to be costly, electric rates will skyrocket. And guess what happens when electric rates skyrocket? When coal costs more and the electric rates skyrocket, what happens to our manufacturing base, ladies and gentlemen? Even more of it goes to China or India or Mexico or Indonesia. You know why? Because they won't pass cap and trade legislation. They won't pass it. And so not only will we have a disadvantage in the manufacturing and jobs world based on the incomes and the salaries that we should pay, when they don't pay a fair wage to their workers, not only will we have that issue for our manufacturers in Virginia. Senator Smith, welcome. Thank you. I had this to you earlier. Not only will we have that issue to deal with, but we'll have the issue of higher cost to manufacture, whether it's the potato chip factory in Bristol or a furniture factory that Bob McDonnell announced this week, jobs being brought to the 9th District in Bassett. You put a burden on them of higher electric rates of 30% or so, and I don't know whether that's the right number, we'll say that. but it's going to be high. It's going to skyrocket. Those jobs going to stay here, or are they going to go somewhere else? By the way, potato chips out of Universal always got promotion district. You go to Walmart, you buy generic chips, they're made for Virginia. You buy generic chips at Walmart. Walmart brand chips that are made in Virginia. So buy chips. Use them. But it is a major issue, cap and trade. Number 2. I got Bradley here. We're going to use you, Bradley. Can you say hi to this cameraman over here? Right now, the debt is over $43,000 for every man, woman, and child in the United States, and Rick Boucher voted to raise the debt ceiling to $14 trillion. When we reach that level, sometime probably later this year or early next year, it'll be $45,000. Many of us here today will only pay interest or maybe a small part of the principal. But Bradley and everyone in Bradley's generation are going to have to pay that money back. We're going to have to pay the Chinese. We're going to have to pay the Japanese. We're going to have to pay the English. And we should not, as the United States of America, the world's strongest economy yet to this day, we should not be in that kind of debt. Now, if you don't like cap and trade, you have to change things in Washington. And to change things in Washington, you have to change congressmen. If you don't think Bradley should be saddled with $45,000 in debt, how old are you, Bradley? Yes, sir. Bradley is 7. If you don't think that Bradley should be forced to pay the debt that we are building up, you have to change congressmen. And in order to change Washington, you have to change congressmen. Ladies and gentlemen, another issue popped up last week. It's been very interesting. Rick Boucher, out of the blue, wrote a letter saying that he, and the press release, of course, go with it. And then he sent it out to his constituents or information about it. Apparently, I haven't checked that out fully, but apparently sent that out on Franklin's trip. But the bottom line is that Rick Boucher decided that he was going to tell them that he didn't agree with the Democrats in Washington about Arizona.
I got that.
You got that,
Yes.
Frank's mail?
I'm not sure that's Frank.
Yeah. So the bottom line is that he said, I don't think that's right. So I went to our Washington County headquarters opening and I said, yeah, that's all great, but he voted not to fund the fence to secure our border. Well, you know, he said it was in this statement, and today Bristol Herald Courier says, well, he voted, and I'm going to paraphrase, he voted to fund the fence, and he voted not to fund the fence, depending on which bill it was, what time of the day, or what time of the week. Ladies and gentlemen, I can assure you, I am a complete believer that we need to build a fence, and not just a regular fence, we need to build a smart fence across the border. The Israelis have done so on their border on the Palestinian West Bank side. I've seen that fence. It's incredible what they tell me it can do. They've got sensors in the ground. You know, if somebody tries to dig under the fence, they know about it. They go check it out. That's the kind of security we need on our border. We can't do anything about the illegal immigrants who are here when they can flood right back in. We've got to protect our southern border first, and then we have to figure out how to protect our northern border. Because the world is changing. The world is changing. And in order to be ready for that changing world, we need a secure border, and that means we need change in Washington. And in order to change Washington, we've got to change Congressmen. There you go. This is the wind of change right here. The winds of change are coming. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not going to be done without a lot of hard work, a lot of bumper strips being put on cars. We have got to get out there and work. I'm doing my part. I know that those of you who came out tonight in this cold, windy, blustery weather to be here on this hillside are doing your part. We are going to win this election. We are going to change Congress, and we're going to change Washington. With your help, we can make a difference so that Bradley and my children, Addie and Davis and Stark, will not be burdened with huge debt and a different America than what we grew up in. One that's not as good as the one we grew up in, because if you're paying back that much debt, the tax structure will have to be higher or the money will have to go through an inflationary period. We will not be the same if we don't make change soon in the way they're doing things in Washington. With your help, we will have victory on the night of November 2nd in the 9th Congressional District and all across the United States. And come January, we will start the process of bringing back the America that we know, so that Bradley and my children and all the other children of these United States can know the quality of life that you and I have had. Thank you very much for having me this evening.